in just a few seconds. Oh, we are now recording. So I encourage you to follow along. When we were last working on this, we had gotten to the end of annotate it. So we had done format it, we'd done annotate it, and you can look at the video that I have already posted on the Padlet to check that. Just some things to remind you, whenever you are doing your assignment, you've got to make sure that you put in all of your dates, okay? So the date that things are due, you put them there, all right? So now what we're going to do, where it says break it down, we are going to start doing that. And I know that you've probably done TP-CASTT in the past with your previous teachers, but we're going to do this again for the sake of review. So you have title, paraphrase, connotation, attitude / tone, shifts, the title again, and then theme. And you're going to write these in complete sentences. So you have a copy of this TP-CASTT, and this is a guide for you. This will go in your brads behind this page. Okay, so this and this will go in the brads. Are we all clear so far? Okay. So now we're going to come back to this page. And when you're doing this on your own, we're doing this by hand today because I want everybody to be with me, literally with me. Remember that it has to be typed, okay? But for what we're doing for today, we're just going to handwrite it. So the first thing that we have to do for title, we'll write that out here, title. And maybe when you're typing this, maybe you want to do a chart. But whatever it is, make sure it's obvious. So whether you bold this or underline it or put it in a chart similar to this, whatever you decide to do, just make sure it's easy for me to read and find stuff. Does that make sense? Yeah. All right. So the first thing where it says title, it says, what do the words of the title suggest to you? What denotations, so that's like dictionary definitions, are presented in the title, and what connotations or associations do the words possess? So pretend you've never read eating poetry before. When you first read that line, what came to your mind? What came to your mind when you first read the title?
Like an animal actually.
Okay. So you might say eating poetry made me think of an animal actually. Now I heard someone say like eating, but eating like a book or pages or what? When you imagine that animal eating it.
Yeah.
Okay, eating pages of poems. I know I say it weird. So this one, it talks about like denotations. There's nothing in here that's really complex. Like the title of the poem it's not like it's complex word. We know what poetry is. We know what eating is. So maybe that's all you have. But notice here it says, what connotations or associations do the words possess? So if you thought of an animal actually eating pages of poems, what does that make you think of? Like, what was your first thought? Did you figure that was strange or, oh, like everybody does it?
I thought it was sort of like a dog in a water type situation.
Okay. Let's maybe do that sort of. Oh, not the Doge. So sort of like the dog ate my homework. Okay. But just make sure that when you're doing this on your own that you address all of those questions. And at least think about them. All right. The next thing it says is to paraphrase. And in a poem that's this short, you can paraphrase by stanza. So that means you would have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe six sentences. Or you can summarize. If it's a really long poem, you can summarize the poem, like just kind of put it into your own words. So let's see, how might we put this, how might we paraphrase this poem? How could we tell what it's about just by looking at the words themselves, not doing any analysis, but really just observing what this means? How would you start to paraphrase this poem?
Someone is discovering their love now for poetry. Oh, I thought
Okay.
not like going into like.
Well, we're not. So let's look at this first stanza. Ink runs from the corners of my mouth. There's no happiness like mine. I've been eating poetry. How could we say that in one sentence without getting too analytical?
The narrator's eating poetry.
Okay. So is he really eating it?
The narrator is happily eating.
Okay.
Reading poetry.
The narrator is happily, I like that, eating or reading poetry. Then it says the librarian doesn't believe what she sees. Her eyes are sad. She walks with her hands in her dress. So we might say something like, the sad librarian can't believe it. Okay? All right. Then we see that the poems, he's finished reading. All right. Now here's where it gets a little tricky because you've got these dogs and all that. So the narrator finishes reading and he refers to the dogs. And in this case, we don't know exactly what that means yet. We haven't done the analysis. I mean, we did it last week, but this, if you're trying to do a paraphrase, this might be confusing to you. And so so in this case, if you wanted to write down, like, I'm not sure exactly what he means yet by when he describes their eyes and their legs and what about them makes the librarian weep. So you can say that, as long as you're still giving a good summary or paraphrase of the poem. So we might say, let's see, I'm confused. Are y'all confused, or am I just speaking for myself?
No, yeah.
Okay, I'm confused by this reference and
write this.
So
you can just kind of write in
Mm-hmm.
footnotes.
Yeah, I'm confused by this reference and his description of their eyes and legs. And why the librarian becomes so upset. And so then it says, she does not understand when I get on my knees and lick her hands, she screams. So maybe we say she doesn't understand his enthusiasm. And we're going to say the narrators because who is he, the dog or the narrator? It's the narrator. All right, and then it says, I am a new man. So we said the other day, we talked about he's changed. The poetry has changed him in a positive way. Can you read my chicken scratch? All right, so do you see that? Do you see what we've done there?
Yes.
All right, so now we have connotation. And if you'll notice your instructions here, it says at least 4 of the 9 elements. So if you look, there's 3, 6, and 9. Do you see that? Okay. And then at first it says, what meaning does the poem have beyond the literal? Fill in the chart below. So we've already done some of this from our work last week. Which ones would you want to start with? Do you want to, we could probably hash out 4 of these already.
Imagery.
All right. So we have imagery.
And we did the light is
Okay, so here's where you're going to maybe want to do bullet points so that I can see very easily that you have 4 things. All right, so imagery. You know what? I think beyond the light is dim. I think ink runs from the corner of my mouth is prettier. Okay, so all right, and so this shows what, well, I'm going to ask you, what does this show that when he says ink runs from the corners of my mouth, what does that literally mean? It's not that it actually is coming out of his mouth. Yeah, he's read so much that it's coming out of him. Okay? He's read so much poetry. Missed a word here. Yeah, he's read so much poetry. It is coming out of him. Okay, so that's an example of imagery. What's another one that we could do?
I feel like details, but we didn't do that.
Yeah.
Um,
All right, so point of view. Is this first person, second person, third person?
first.
First person. So we'll put first person. And how do we know that?
He refers to himself.
Yeah, so we're going to put I. He uses those terms. All right, what's next? What is something else that we can add here?
I guess
That's symbolism.
Okay, what's the symbol?
you can use it like eating poetry to symbolize reading poetry.
Okay, so that consumption of. All right, so symbol. All right, symbolism, eating. Symbolizes his utter consumption of the written words. All right, so we have symbol there. So that the eating, the actual Eating is a symbol for consuming. All right. And then we can do one more.
Figurative language.
Okay, so and what's one that we've already done?
There were blonde legs for my brush.
Okay, so we have you have to put the whole thing there, like the whole simile. Blonde legs burn like brush. That's a simile comparing the dog's legs to not an actual brush, but like the kind of that grass, okay, to yeah, yeah, the tall grass, I guess, would be a better way to do that. All right, so we have 4 done: imagery, point of view, symbolism, and figurative language. And we were specific about that figurative language, okay? So now we have attitude, and attitude is tone. And we already did this, right?
I believe so.
You should have the notes for that. What tone word did we come up with?
Enthusiastic, passionate.
Okay. And notice here it says explain why you chose this tone. So we can say the narrator. Oh golly. You said enthusiastic?
Passionate.
And passionate about poetry. Afterward, he romps with joy. Now, it's always good to put a quote just to back up what you say. So this shows that he's both passionate and enthusiastic. He's romping with joy. All right, what comes after attitude? Shifts. You have to say that carefully sometimes. All right, so we say shifts. Shifts. All right. So is there any place in this poem where it seems to change?
I mean, the
Yes.
first stanza he's like happy, and then the second one he starts talking about the librarian being sad.
Okay. Where does the narrator change?
It's I am a new man.
I am a new man. So we would say it shifts between 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, between the 5th and 6th stanza. Between the 5th and 6th stanza, the narrator has grown into a new man. Because he has learned so much from reading poetry. All right. Then we have the title again. And so this is where you and some in a poem like this, it gets a little bit repetitive. because it's short. But it says, reanalyze the title on an interpretive level. What part does the title play in the overall interpretation of the poem? So what are your thoughts on that? No thoughts? No thoughts? No thoughts?
Just like, you know now, after reading the poem, that he's like talking about reading poetry, not necessarily reading it.
Okay, so after, or,
After analyzation.
yeah, after
Our
analysis, I can conclude. I don't really want you to write that, so I'm not going to give it to you as an example. After analysis, the reader concludes, the author or the narrator is reading poetry rather than eating it. The next one is theme, and that's going to require a little bit of instruction from me because I want to make sure that y'all know how to write a really good thematic statement. And so we'll come back to this. And it's about time to go anyway. So once we're done with this, once we're done with theme, we're going to be done with this assignment. And you'll be able to use this as a model for yourself. Okie dokie. There is one more part to it that